The next conversion we must talk about is Stepan's. This is obviously a very important event in the book. The book begins with Stepan and it ends with him. In the beginning of the book, Stepan is a liberal, and he believes in a God, but he does not believe in specific revelation. Or rather, he believes in God, but only the God within. He believes in a being, quote, who is conscious of himself in me, end quote. He respects Christianity, but he is no Christian. He likens himself to an ancient pagan. He says most of all that Christianity never understood woman and her liberation. And then Stepan converts at the end of the book. He confesses his sins, he takes the last meal, and he accepts the last rites from a priest. What happened? We have already seen Stepan finding a backbone and some self-respect in a couple of episodes, video 11 for that. Furthermore, we have seen him be a man of great civic ambition, but with no luck in execution. He has tried to tame the revolutionaries when they took over the literary journal, and he tried to tame them at the literary celebration. In each case, he failed. And in the second case, his failure sets him on the path to conversion. Stepan shows a remarkable mix of firmness and humiliation after his disastrous speech at the literary celebration. Firmness in his attempt, humiliation in his failure. He writes a letter to Daria, also Stravogin's confessor, as he leaves town. He says this, "The die is cast. I am leaving this town forever. Whether, I don't know. Everyone I loved has turned away from me. But you, a pure, naive being, you, a meek one, whose fate was almost joined with mine by the will of one capricious and tyrannical heart, you, who perhaps in the stain watched me shed faint-hearted tears on the eve of our unrealized marriage. To you goes the last cry of my heart. To you is my last duty. To you alone." Stepan has taken ill. He has a fever, but the illness does not stop him from putting on a traveling outfit and leaving town. He does not leave in a cart or in a train, but rather on a foot, like a pilgrim. He is going to run and find Russia, though he is not certain that Russia exists. As he flees, he runs into Liza, who is on her way to be killed by the burnt-out house. His former student insists on making a cross over him. She does, and he leaves town on foot. We next see Stepan in the last substantive chapter of the book, the last peregrination of Stepan Tropinovich. Stepan wanders, and he knows not where he is going. Some peasants pick him up and take him to town. Peasants all over are just plain nice to him. They meet his needs. Finally, he meets a young woman who might be called the heroine of the whole book, Sofia Matveyevna. She is an agent of saving Stepan. We have actually met her before. She had been framed by the revolutionaries for having obscene material in her Gospels as she was hawking Bibles. She was only released through the heroic actions of Mavriky. It is this framed Bible hawker who nurses Stepan in his time of need. In the face of her charity, Stepan simply melts. He begins forgiving all his enemies. He comes to recognize that people must believe, and they must believe in the gospel. He comes to appreciate the people, or almost to appreciate them. He believes that Sofia is sent by God, specific providence. He curses the revolutionaries and the nihilists and other people. He even seems a little bit crazy. He has what they call some inflammation of the brain fever, which is a way of showing disdain for a merely worldly existence. His humiliation has disappointed his hopes in a civic sense, and hence his whole life. He confesses once more to his new nurse, "I am a blackguard. Oh, I have been dishonest all my life." What a confession. Sofia is greatly worried for him. She treats him with dignity. She reads him from the Bible. She especially reads him the story of Jesus casting out a demon into a group of swine who are then drowned in the sea. She is softening his heart. And he realizes that he has been lukewarm, and the lukewarm are precisely the kind of people that God spits out. That is what Tikhon had said to Stravogen. But it is different for Stepan. Varvara arrives and takes charge of the situation. In fact, she pushes Sofia aside. There is no hope Stepan will survive. And on his deathbed, he confessed and took communion quite willingly. And everyone comes to congratulate him on receiving the Holy Sacrament. People weep. How our narrator throws a bit of wrench in the conversion and says that, quote, either he has really come to believe, or the majestic ceremony of the performance of the sacrament had shaking him in a row is the artistic receptivity of his nature. It seems to me pretty clear that it's a conversion, in that so much besides the sacrament ceremony surround his conversion. He demanded Bible reading. He saw his life in light of biblical revelation. He confessed his guilt before all people. He comes to recognize the goodness of life and the need to arrange it toward the eternal things like great thoughts or love. And afterwards, he says that love is higher than being. Love is the crown of being. And is it possible for being not to bow before it? Love is higher than being. What a great way of articulating the Christian view. Stepan dies 3 days later, never really recovering from his brain fever, though he doesn't resurrect. So it is precisely in Stepan's humiliation that he finds conversion. His uselessness, suffering, and loss bring him low, make him despair about affecting the world positively. This softens his heart to the Lord, to seeing his humiliation as a personal preparation for accepting God's grace. Both Shatov and Stepan are dead. Stepan's is a very apolitical Christianity, much different from Shatov's Christian nation approach. Stepan's conversion is an embrace of suffering and being brought low. The proud are humbled. And the nobility of humility is what he stands for. Such a person would not prepare a revolution or participate in it. True. But would such a person be able to stand up to Pyotr Stepanovich? Would such a person stiffen the backbone of the liberals? They are humble because they are weak, and they are weak because they have been discarded in effect. Shatov's Christianity does not come from his humility, but rather from his appreciation of mystery and his moral seriousness. Such a Christianity would politically resist Pyotr Stepanovich precisely because Pyotr was a threat to the church. This is the significance of how he earlier says that he will raise a nation up to the level of the church. This is the range of Christianity. It can be very apolitical and thus subject to tyranny, such as when Paul submits to Nero. And this part comes up in Stepan's conversion. And it can be spiritual political, and thus subject to being hijacked by politics, a long-standing issue where politics comes to be part of a political establishment. And this comes from Shatov's view. But note that Shatov dies. All the other Christians in the book, Darya, Shatov's sister, Sofia, the Bible hawker, and Stepan's nurse, they're politically irrelevant. They are victims, though they are agents of personal conversion. These are women, of course, and hence apolitical. Shatov's is a more political Christianity, or might be. His conversion coincides with him becoming a father, and therefore becoming ready for family life, which is not political. None of these heroes can resist the revolution effectively on a mass scale, or at least none of them do. There is no marriage on the horizon between a spirited man like Mavriki and a Christian woman like Darya. I would love to see those two run off and get married. Lisa and Mevriki are as close as we get, but she likes the dark man instead of the upright one. There is no hope in this book. Many people end up dead, and all the relations are dead ends. No one has a child who survives and brings hope. We will count the corpses in the next video and try to make sense of it all.